Cup or bust, Stanley Cup or it's a failure, and they want to win here. Those are the words of the leaders on the Edmonton Oilers squad from today's media availabilities. And of course, well, now we are left once again as an Oilers fan base sitting here saying, can we believe them this time? That is the biggest question because, right, we know this group wants to win. We know they want to win here. We know they want to win the Stanley Cup. And following a bitter disappointment here in round 2 against the Vegas Golden Knights just a few days ago, the Oilers are already talking hope for next season and the Stanley Cup. We'll break that all down in a matter of moments, but friends, this is Dolany TV. Good afternoon. Welcome aboard. My pleasure to have you. I'm Tyson as we get things settled up for the beginning of the offseason. The players have spoken. They have told you what to expect next year, what they're expecting next year, and what they look forward to doing for us coming forward as they enter their break time, summertime, golfing season, whatever you want to say, we're there. But before we get there, friends, if you are new to Dolany TV, need you to consider hitting that subscribe button here on the channel for me. I would love to have you aboard for all the off-season coverage. And then trust me, it's May 16th today. Summer is going to fly by as it always does. We'll close it out with a great old time down there at Fort Calgary for Country Thunder, and then we will go and get back into this whole Oilers season shebang with rookie camp starting up, getting ready for the Penticton games, that whole thing. But right now what we need to focus on is that big question I asked you. Can we actually believe them this time? Is this the makings of a season which we are never going to see again in Edmonton Oilers country, where the Oilers start game 1 of the preseason all the way to game 5, 6, 7, game 4 maybe even of the Stanley Cup final, to lifting the Stanley Cup and being the most dominant team we have ever seen in the NHL, or the team that it takes to win the 2024 Stanley Cup? That is the biggest question. It's Zach Hyman who said Stanley Cup or it's a failure next year. It's Leon Draisaitl who said this team wants to win here now. It is, of course, Connor McDavid who said the famous words I've tried to throw down your throats a couple of times this year, cup or bust. Well, you know what? They're talking big goal. They're talking about it. And my biggest question with all of this, following the exit, you know I am very big time Homer Oilers. Let's go. We're going to win the cup every single year. I'm going to take a rational stance here and just kind of stand in the sand a moment and say, can we actually believe them? Because that's what the Oilers fan base wants to hear after losing out in round 2 against the Vegas Golden Knights, right? We want to know that this team wants to win the Stanley Cup. We want to know that Connor doesn't want to win anywhere else. We want to know that Leon Draisaitl wants to win here rather than anywhere else. That's great. Those are nice, kind, great, awesome words. Great, makes me feel good on a Tuesday afternoon. But is it serious? Is this team actually going to show up and get the job done? And you know what? Here's the thing, right? This team was otherworldly from whatever, January 11th, January 13th, whatever the magical cutoff date is, where the Oilers had like one regulation loss the whole dang time or whatever it was. Guess what? I don't care about that. I don't care about this. What I care about is this Oilers team going out there and building that championship pedigree from day 1 of the regular season all the way through the final game of the Stanley Cup final. And what I will tell you, that nice little stretch there from January all the way until the playoffs began, that's all fine and dandy. But that little limited stretch within a season, if we see that again at any point, is not going to be enough to convince me that this Oilers group was serious about what they were talking about today, right? I'm saying it's just nice filler words to try and end everything off on a good note. We'll get them next year, don't you worry. But I don't want to sit here and buy into that and sell that hope as of yet. I want to see, obviously, the management changes, the coaching changes, the obviously 2 personnel changes, the trades made, the signings made, all of that. We need to see what comes out of that, and then how this group responds to the failure that was this season, right? The failure to get past the second round after being all the way to the third round against Colorado and getting swept. Right now I'm a little bitter, right? I wasn't very bitter about getting swept by the Colorado Avalanche in round 3 because I knew we were going to get them this year, right? This was the year to win the Stanley Cup. And then somehow we failed to get to the third round again because this team just did not show up the same way it had for a stretch of the season, the same way that it was capable of on some nights at certain points, right? Is if you want to translate what we saw in the playoffs from the Edmonton Oilers, whether it be the goaltending, coaching, managing, players up front, players on the back end, I don't care. It just wasn't good enough, or we'd still be playing. That's kind of how I'm taking this stance right now. So when we look at it and these guys are talking, we'll get them next year, man. Don't you worry. Well, guess what? Great words, great, awesome. Nice to try and cheer me up on a Tuesday, but I really do not care until this team can show up night in, night out. And obviously, yes, Connor McDavid is human. Leon Draisaitl is human. Injuries happen, but at any given point that this Oilers team does not have more depth than it has going into next year, guess what? Next year, if you can't get them, if you can't go out there and dummy the other team on a nightly basis, yes, are you going to lose game in, game out? Once in a while. Absolutely. Every good team loses, right? Boston had the best regular season of all time, lost in the first round, and still didn't win all 82 games. So it's not possible to win all 82 games. I'm rational and I know that. But unfortunately, we as Oilers fans know, and this team was a special case study of it, is they can play great hockey for stretches. They can play great moments within hockey games. They can come up just short. And then there are great games where they just don't show up at all. They might as well kept their gear off and forfeited the win, because my goodness, that was a painful 3 hours of my life wasted watching that garbage heap on ice, right? I told you, I'm a little frustrated today. And it's because of these comments, because it's just so much too little too late. Oh, you wanted to win next year? Oh, you should have told us so as I didn't get my hopes up about winning this season, right? I shouldn't have thought this was the year, right? Oh, this year you didn't say it's Stanley Cup or failure, so I guess this ain't a failure, right? Oh, it's all good. We'll get them next year. Yeah, I'm a little upset by it, right? That's you haven't seen me very visibly upset in a while, but I'm a little upset by that, right? Oh, well, get them next year. No, we should have got them this year, you guys. Come on now, let's figure this out here. But it just really comes down to it for me. The Oilers just have to show up night in, night out. You know what? If you lose, that's fine. Don't lose because you didn't show up. That's what ticks me off. And in the playoffs, we saw examples of that, right? Whether you want to say Skinner just didn't have it, or the defense was lazy, or the offense just didn't look interested in taking it to the net. I'm sorry, it's the... That's the closest I've been, I think, all year. It's the Stanley Cup playoffs, right? It is the Stanley Cup playoffs. And if you can't bother to show up for a game, that's embarrassing. And I mean, we are fans of this team, and we cheer for them no matter what. But to go through this playoffs knowing the expectations, hoping that the team had the same expectations in mind, and seeing the product on the ice that we did, it is more a personnel failure than I think we've seen in previous years, right? We've known with teams in the past, you think about the 21 Oilers that played the Jets in the first round, you think about the team that played against the Chicago Blackhawks in that play-in round. We knew those teams weren't destined for the Cup, but any team can get hot and win the Stanley Cup by luck, right? It's the Stanley Cup playoffs. That's why you got to play the games. But what frustrates me most about this year is you know that this was a team that could win the Stanley Cup if they willed their way there. Obviously, the injuries, right? We're getting the injury reports. Fogle might have a broken wrist. Who knows? Going for surgery maybe. Evander Kane was a walking cast pretty much in the playoffs. Great, I get that. But here's the thing, right? Is at some point this lack of depth stuff has to come to an end, because, I'm sorry, we just had this entire cast and crew of guys score goals in the playoffs. And guess what? Guys named Hyman, Nugent-Hopkins, and Kane were the guys that were kind of didn't show up in the second round. So when I'm sitting here saying that everybody's got to show up, I'm not asking a lot. And you know what? Dylan Holloway didn't see any ice time in the playoffs. Heck of a replacement player if Warren Fogle can't shoot a puck. Oh, by the way, right on the back end. Well, you know, you had some options. Marcus Niemelainen, right? You needed to send a message. You needed to be heavier. You could have played Niemelainen over Broberg. Again, it just comes down to the personnel was simply not good enough this year to get the job done. And it's not because they're bad personnel. They just did not go out there and show up. That is my summary of why I'm upset today. And obviously these nice words, despite how great of an incentive that is to cheer for this team, I just have a feeling if it's anything like this year, it'll be a lot of empty words trying to make us feel better at the end of a bad season, right? I mean, hey, we made the second round of the playoffs, game 6. That's awesome. For an Oilers fan, that's awesome. But guess what? The window is open, and the problem with the window open is it starts closing soon, right? Windows don't last forever in the NHL. Unless you're Detroit in the late 90s, early 2000s, but that's a whole nother question, or the Pittsburgh Penguins of the late 2000s to 2010s. But again, very few teams actually achieve that status, and it's usually one at a time, and the Oilers are very unlikely to be that team based on our prior history, right? Unless you count the 80s where this anomaly of super team was a thing without salary cap. But I'm sorry, I'm just a little pessimistic today, as I have been with everything else I have talked to people about, whatever. Very bad mood day for me today, but I am sorry to say I'm really not hyped up by these comments by the Oilers, because I feel there is a great risk of these being empty words unless the Oilers decide to show up and actually play like they're capable of night in, night out next season. And again, we've been asking that for years, and I don't know if that's going to come to fruition here in the next season. Friends, I'm Tyson. This is Dolany TV. Can we actually believe them? I don't think so. I don't know. That's the way I'll put it. I don't think so, but I don't know. Because it's Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl and company, and you just never know. But at the same rate, I don't think so. Because the biggest thing is, until you prove me otherwise, I ain't going to believe it. Friends, I'm Tyson, Dolany TV, up on, out of here.